Hello and welcome. It's Friday, the 14th of March. You're tuned in to our 10 a.m. newscast coming to you from ARIRANG's news center in Seoul. Let's take a look at what's making the headlines. A top U.S. military official warns North Korea's ballistic missile threat to the continental United States has reached a level of practical consideration, not just theoretical. Korea says it deeply regrets remarks made by Japan's top government spokesman, in which he denied his country's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. Plus, U.S. officials investigating the missing Malaysia Airlines jet say they are convinced the shutdown of two communications systems happened separately, indicating the plane did not come out of the sky because of a catastrophic failure. But our top story this morning, a top U.S. military official is warning the ballistic missile threat posed by North Korea to the mainland United States has developed from a theoretical consideration to a practical concern. Kwon Soa starts us off.
The latest comments by a leading U.S. military figure show the U.S. is growing increasingly concerned by the ballistic missile threat posed by North Korea. At a Senate hearing Thursday, General Charles Jacoby, head of the Northern Command and North American Aerospace Defense Command, said that while threats to U.S. national security were becoming gradually more imperceptible, the U.S. military could make a confident assessment of where North Korea is in terms of ballistic missile capability.
Tangible evidence of North Korean and Iranian ambitions confirms that a limited ballistic missile threat to the homeland has matured from a theoretical to a practical consideration.
He added that his agencies were working with the Missile Defense Agency to deal with the potential proliferation of dangerous technologies to other states or terrorist groups. South Korea-based news channel YTN reported Friday that Jacoby also referred to the ICBM that was paraded through Pyongyang at the 60th anniversary of the Korean War truce celebration in July of last year. North Korea has developed and tested a number of short and medium-range missiles, including a series of Scud missile and short-range projectile firings in recent weeks. But analysts have generally discounted claims the regime has the capability to construct a miniature nuclear device for intercontinental ballistic missile delivery. Experts worry that if Pyongyang does possess such technology, the regime will pose a much greater security threat to South Korea, Japan, and the United States. Kwon Soa, ARIRANG News.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's aunt, Kim Kyung-hee, is believed to have either been removed from the country's parliament or to have stepped down of her own free will. This despite the country's recent rubber stamp elections, where Kim, the wife of recently executed Jang Song-taek, was listed as a member of the Supreme People's Assembly. Officials from South Korea's intelligence agency said Thursday that the Kim who is listed appears to be a person with the same name who was also present in previous elections. That Kim represented North Pyeongan-buk-do province, the same constituency that Kim Kyung-hee was elected to represent in this year's election. Officials also do not exclude the chance that Kim Young-nam, chairman of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, may have also been eliminated. The South Korean government has expressed its deep regret over highly offensive and historically inaccurate remarks made by Japan's top government spokesman. Earlier this week, Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga denied Japan's sexual enslavement of Korean women during World War II. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Hwang Sang-hee reports.
South Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs slammed Japan on Thursday for its latest offensive remarks about the victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of women.
Japan is inflicting another wound on the surviving victims of sexual enslavement by denying its military's direct involvement, which it had previously acknowledged in the Kono Statement.
The Kono Statement is a landmark apology issued by Japan in 1993 to the 200,000 or so women, mostly Korean, who were forced into sexual slavery during the Second World War. Tokyo has been backtracking on that apology in recent months by calling into question the validity of testimony given by Korean women that established the basis of the statement. Japanese Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said Wednesday at a press briefing that there was no evidence that Japan forced the recruitment of women. The comments came on the same day the two neighbors were holding their first high-level talks in 8 months, which ended without results. Speculation leading up to the talks was that Japan would propose a summit with South Korea on the sidelines of the Nuclear Security Summit in The Hague later this month. More than a year into office now, President Park Geun-hye has yet to sit down with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. President Park has said she would not meet with a leader who fails to acknowledge his country's historical wrongdoings.
The South Korean government believes it is important to engage in talks when the two leaders can reach productive outcomes rather than holding talks for talk's sake.
Seoul's foreign ministry says that Japan must first take sincere steps to settle the history issues in order to hold productive talks with South Korea. Hwang Sang-hee, ARIRANG News.
North Korea has agreed to hold a second round of Red Cross talks with Japan next week in the northern Chinese city of Shenyang. Japan's public broadcaster NHK reports that both countries will be sending government representatives to the two-day meeting that starts next Wednesday. They are expected to follow up on progress made in the first round of talks earlier this month, when North Korea agreed to cooperate in repatriating the remains of Japanese who died around the end of World War II in what is now North Korea. There is speculation the Red Cross meetings will lead to formal bilateral talks between the two governments. Back here in South Korea, and the final decision on next month's key interest rate will likely fall on the shoulders of Bank of Korea Governor nominee Lee Ju-yeol. Our Hwang Ji-ae has more on some of the challenges facing the veteran central bank official, whose confirmation hearing is slated for next week.
Wrapping up his final monetary policy meeting on Thursday, Bank of Korea Governor Kim Jung-soo said he was successful during his 4-year term in giving the central bank back to the people. He added he had done his best under some difficult circumstances.
People normally say that the past 4 years represent the first and the biggest financial crisis in 100 years. The global financial market changed very rapidly.
While there has been criticism over a lack of communication with the market during his term, analysts rated Governor Kim's monetary policies as above average. The man who is now likely to be taking over the burden is Lee Ju-yeol, a veteran central bank official who's been tapped as the next governor. Experts say the main challenges for Lee will be how to cope with external risks stemming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's stimulus tapering and how to coordinate with the government to revitalize the domestic economy. They add that the new top central banker will feel a heavy responsibility as the circumstances at home and abroad are currently at odds.
The new governor should not focus on short-term goals. Blindlessly following the government's drive to boost the local economy should also be avoided. The central bank should show leadership as a pillar of monetary policies while communicating with the market.
Before taking office in April, nominee Lee will have to go through a parliamentary confirmation hearing next Wednesday. The National Assembly, however, does not have the power to veto Lee's appointment. Analysts say the first hearing in the Bank of Korea's 60-year history is expected to go smoothly, given that the central bank veteran has gone through similar procedures before while holding senior positions in the central bank. Hwang Ji-ae, ARIRANG News.
Said that a team of South Korea.
Get connected to Korea and the world. Join us every weekday for the latest developments out of Korea, Asia, and beyond. On air, on your mobile, and online, we lead the way every day. ARIRANG News.
To try and resolve the crisis in Ukraine, the European Union also offers 15 billion. The annual session of China's top legislature came to a close Thursday, with various government bodies outlining how they'll carry out wide-ranging reforms, from fighting corruption and chronic pollution to the challenges Facing the Chinese economy, the nation's premier laid out Beijing's goals in a closing news conference. Our Ji Myung-gil reports.
The nearly 3,000 delegates of the National People's Congress ended their 10-day annual session this Thursday. In a press conference to close out the NPC, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang said this year's event was successful in defining major missions and setting specific goals. They included fighting corruption, setting a target for economic growth, and cutting down on the nation's chronic pollution problem. On corruption, Li said there will be zero tolerance for corrupt behavior or corrupt officials, and that those who are found guilty of violating the laws of the country will be punished to the full extent of the law. On the government's growth forecast of 7.5%, Li said China had the capabilities to ensure that economic growth will stay in a reasonable range this year, while also acknowledging the severe challenges facing the economy, namely downward pressure. Last year, China's growth rate settled at a pace of 7.7%. Li also outlined measures the NPC laid out for tackling pollution. They included shutting down 50,000 small coal-fired furnaces, reducing sulfur and nitrogen emissions from coal-burning power plants, removing old high-emission cars from roads, and promoting cleaner diesel-fueled vehicles. The Chinese premier also used the opportunity to speak about missing Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, calling on all relevant parties to enhance coordination to ensure that the plane is located as quickly as possible. Ji Myung-gil, ARIRANG News.
The government and the Korean Medical Association, who are locked in a dispute over the government's plans to reform the medical sector, may begin talks as early as this Friday on calling off a planned doctors' strike. The Ministry of Health and Welfare said Thursday that the government and the KMA are currently in the process of mediating schedules for negotiations. This comes after Prime Minister Jung Hong-won proposed talks to find a compromise by March 20th in order to avoid a full 6-day strike by KMA doctors, which was planned to begin on the 24th. The Medical Association began its strike earlier this week with a 1-day walkout in protest at government plans to introduce a telemedicine system and set up for-profit subsidiaries. Korean officials have confirmed yet another outbreak of avian influenza in a southern Seoul suburb. The Animal and Plant Quarantine Agency confirmed Thursday that a dead bean goose found in the city of Gwacheon in Gyeonggi-do province was infected with the H5N8 strain of the bird flu. If confirmed to be highly pathogenic, access within 10 kilometers of the area will be restricted, which includes southern parts of the Seoul metro area. The city has banned the movement of poultry in the area, while officials are stepping up quarantine measures and disinfection procedures are also underway. Meanwhile, Seoul Zoo, which is less than 2 kilometers away from where the dead goose was found, has decided to close its doors for the time being. Now, the world's largest furniture retailer is coming to town. Ikea is scheduled to open its first store in Korea later this year. And to give locals a taste of what to expect, the Swedish furniture giant has opened up a showroom. Yulian reports.
Famous for its blue and yellow supersized stores and build-it-yourself products, Ikea will open its first store in Seoul by the end of this year. Korean consumers got an early glimpse at the Swedish-based company's simple and low-priced line of furniture at a special showroom that opened this week.
I'm very excited because we get to see many different designs and can purchase them at cheaper prices.
The marketing manager for Ikea Korea says the company has worked hard to tailor to the needs and preferences of the local population.
Is very much to understand more the market. So we have done a lot of research to understand life at home, what are the dreams and needs for the many people, and then of course we will provide solutions that fits the many dreams for people in Korea.
Ikea Korea is scheduled to open up its first branch in Gwangmyeong-si in the southwest of Seoul by the end of this year, and purchased land in Goyang-si northwest of Seoul last year, where it plans to open up its second. The imminent arrival of the global furniture giant has certainly caught the attention of local furniture companies, prompting them to overhaul business strategies.
We are unveiling a lineup of premium furniture. We changed the furniture on display to more high-quality items. And we are also providing top-notch customer service. So we feel we have a good shot at winning over customers.
The nation's top furniture brands also plan to boost the number of items sold through offline channels and in online malls to extend their reach to customers. Yurian, ARIRANG News.
Okay, now we're going to turn it over to our news center for a look at the international stories that are making the headlines at this hour. Eunice.
Good morning, Mark. We'll begin with continuing coverage on that missing jetliner Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. The White House has announced that a new search area may be opened in the Indian Ocean based on some, quote, new information that was not specified during that news briefing. White House spokesman Jay Carney said the information was not necessarily conclusive and that the U.S. was consulting with international partners on how to proceed. The development occurs after Malaysia's transportation minister rejected a Wall Street Journal report released Thursday, which said the jetliner could have kept flying for 4 hours after its last contact with air traffic control, citing U.S. investigators and officials. Meanwhile, sources close to the investigation say satellites picked up on pings or faint electronic pulses after the plane went missing, indicating that troubleshooting systems were available for the pilots to use to communicate with air traffic controllers. Next, we'll turn to the United Nations, where the Security Council is mulling a resolution that would affirm Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity ahead of Crimea's referendum on Sunday. Ukraine's interim Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk is there as well to collect support. And earlier, German Chancellor Angela Merkel issued a strongly worded warning at Russian President Vladimir Putin, saying there would be a catastrophe if Russia continued its course, as neighbors of Russia would be threatened, which could mean massive political and economic damage to Russia. But no sign of change of course in the Crimea, as Russia launched new military exercises Thursday along its border with Ukraine. And in Harlem, New York City, search teams have found an 8th body amid the rubble of the explosion that leveled 2 buildings on Wednesday. The death toll is expected to rise as rescuers are fighting near-freezing conditions to sift through the 3-story pile of bricks and twisted metal where apartment blocks once stood. More than 60 were injured. Investigators suspect it was a gas leak that caused the blast, though the possibility of a stove being left on is also being considered. They are also considering whether there is a connection between the explosion and a water main break nearby. Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg posted on his personal page that he has made a phone call to U.S. President Barack Obama to express his frustration over his government's electronic surveillance practices. He wrote that he is concerned about the damage the government is creating for everyone's future and that he believes it will take a long time before true full reform can be seen. The White House confirmed the phone call without offering extra comment.
And TGI Friday, everyone, as we kick things off in Formula One racing, as the 2014 Formula One season is set to begin this weekend in Australia. Now, with the Australian Grand Prix kicking off the new season of Formula One racing, all eyes will be on Red Bull Racing Sebastian Vettel, who's won 4 straight Formula One titles and will be going after his 5th. And of course, with the new season, fans will be introduced to brand new regulations, which will introduce 1.6-liter turbocharged V6 engines, a first since 1988 that turbos were used in the racing. And now moving over to the NFL, where the free agency market is on fire after Thursday, after 2 big names were scooped up, and the Denver Broncos were involved in both signings. Now, first off, the now former Dallas Cowboys defensive end DeMarcus Ware, who's the Cowboys' career sack leader, left to Denver on a 3-year deal that will pay him $30 million. And while their defense got the boost they needed, their quarterback Peyton Manning lost his top target in Eric Decker, who signed with the New York Jets for a 5-year, $36.25 million deal as the NFL FA market continues to remain red hot. And back here in the nation, let's take a look at the Seoul SK Knights take on the Goyang Orions in Game 1 of the first-round playoff series in the KBL. Of course, going into the game here, the SK Knights take a slim 17-16 lead after the first quarter before they blow it up in the second quarter, outscoring the Orions 31-15 as they take a 48-31 lead going to halftime. The Orion starts rallying back in the third quarter, but the rally is cut short as Kim Sun-young puts up 19 points in the game as SK takes Game 1, 84-73. And finishing things off in the V-League, where Daejeon KGC beat the Korea Expressway in straight sets 3-0 over on the women's side. Meanwhile, with Samsung Hwanja Blue Fangs taking on Russian Cash Vespil, let's take a look at the highlights. Now, with the Blue Fangs already clinching the league title, they take it a bit easy until Russian Cash starts dominating them on the court, taking the first set 25-23. Samsung Hwanja decides to turn it up a notch as they take the next two sets before Russian Cash bounces back and controls the defense, with Kang Young-jun putting up 33 points on the night. The Vespits take the next two sets and the match 3-2. And that's going to wrap it up for me. This has been SJ. Have a great weekend, everyone, and see you guys again for your sports needs.
Well, we had a cold start to the day, and it's going to be a breezy and windy afternoon as the spring winds will continue to sweep the peninsula. And right now, there are patches of clouds passing by the nation, but as the day goes on, more sun will come out behind the clouds, so it should be sunnier than last couple of days, which makes a good condition to spend some time outdoor, but be sure to dress warmly. Now, I'm sure what you really want to know, though, is the weather outlook for this weekend. Well, I've got a good news for you. Picture-perfect weather is in store this weekend. Temperatures will jump up to a mild side under dazzling sunshine, and on Sunday, temperatures will hike up to 16 degrees Celsius here in Seoul. So plan ahead to make the most of your upcoming weekend, but not so fast. It should be windy and chilly today, so let's take a closer look at those numbers. The afternoon highs in Seoul and Daegu and Busan will all rise to 9, while Gwangju should top out at 8 this afternoon. Now let's see how other regions are looking. It looks like down on Jeju and Daejeon will climb up to 9, while the top temperature on Mount Kunggang will be quite cold at -4. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's the global forecast for viewers around the world.
And that's all for now. We'll be back at noon Korea time. In the meantime, you can always catch up with what's been happening on our website, which can be found at arirang.co.kr/news.